वेलकम टू कम्युनिटी राउंड अप। हम यहाँ पे आज ब्रैम्पटन की आर्ट गैलरी के अंदर हैं, जहाँ पे के जो फॉर्मर ओंटारियो के प्रीमियर थे बिल डेविस, उनकी याद में आज एक मेमोरियल किया जा रहा है। और ये सारे का सारा इनिशिएटिव ब्रैम्पटन के मेयर पैट्रिक ब्राउन ने लिया था। यहाँ पे बहुत सारे लोग आए हुए हैं और इसमें कुछ फॉर्मर जो हैं मेयर्स हैं सिटीज़ के, और इंटेलेक्चुअल्स हैं, राइटर्स हैं, और प्रीमियर्स भी हैं, और उनमें हमारे डकफोर्ड साहब भी यहाँ पे आए हुए हैं और सब उनको याद कर रहे हैं, उनकी लेगेसी को याद कर रहे हैं। तो आइए आपको उसका एक लुक देते हैं इवेंट का, और फिर आपके साथ फिर से जुड़ते हैं।
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Navjeet Kaur Brar, your Regional Councillor for Wards 2 and 6 and Vice Chair for Community Services. And I would like to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon to honor the incredible person who has made a remarkable impact in our city and province. Before we would begin, I would like to acknowledge that the City of Brampton is located on the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat First Nations, who have called this land home since time immemorial. We acknowledge the treaty agreed in the Adjutant's Purchase of 1818, and we are committed to our ongoing role in reconciliation through meaningful action that is rooted in truth, justice, and respect. We are grateful to the original caretakers of this land who have ensured we are able to work, play, live, and in Brampton now and in the future. Joining us today, we have our Mayor Brown, our Councillor Keenan, and Councillor Palashi. Members of the Davis family, Premier Ford, members of the Provincial Parliament, Steve Paikin, the Canadian journalist and author of Bill Davis, the nation builder and not so blind after all, the Region Appeal representatives, including Chair Anika. Now I would like to invite Mayor Brown to the podium to say a few words.
Well, thank you, Councillor Brar, for being the MC today. Normally we have formal events like this, protocol will give me a script of things to say, and when it comes to Bill Davis, when it comes to the great Bill Davis in Brampton, there's no script required because he means so much to this city. I'd be remiss not to mention, it's nice to have former Toronto Mayor John Tory here. I know the Premier considered like an additional son, and so your presence here is appreciated. When you think of Premier Davis, of course, his legacy is one of the most proud in Canadian history. Creating the first Ministry of the Environment in Ontario, appointing the first woman to cabinet, some of the most progressive labour legislation in Ontario history. The fact you have labour leaders, even today, praising Bill Davis. You don't normally hear that from organised labour leaders, but he set the tone, the gold standard in public service, and of course his role in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. There's so much on a national level to be proud of, but in this city, it's what he meant to Brampton that counts the most. Here, he wasn't Premier Davis. Everyone had a story about the Premier who was fiercely proud of our city. And you'd hear stories about when he traveled abroad, he'd always bring it back to Brampton. If you were somewhere else in the GTA, you were in the greater Brampton area. He never forgot his roots, lived his entire life on Main Street. How fitting is that we have this celebration of his life, this monument celebrating his contributions to our country here on Main Street as well. What impressed me most is he just radiated kindness and decency in all occasions. Even years after being out of public service, he was always looking at ways to help people in the smallest ways. I shared these stories with Neil before, but he'd be at a coffee shop in Caledon and find someone who was struggling to become a bus operator. He would call me and say, "Can you give this chap some guidance? He's trying his best." But he'd just meet complete strangers and want to help them. In this monument, it's a reflection of bringing divergent voices together, and it reflects unity. And that really, I think, defines Premier Davis. He was a uniter. He brought opposing ideas together. And I remember his 90th birthday party. You had the former Liberal leader there, the former NDP leader there, paying tribute to him, many prominent Conservatives. But who else in the country would have every partisan affiliation there singing his praises? I remember laughing that Bob Rae at his birthday party said, if I could vote for Bill Davis today and run as a candidate, I would. And that's a former NDP premier. But I think everyone who was in the premier's life just, fell enraptured by the decency and kindness and vision. And so today's a celebration of that. And I hope that the artwork, and I know it is, will be fitting of his incredible legacy. And I say what is interesting about this monument outside is our initial idea is we want to celebrate Premier Davis with something extraordinary because he was extraordinary. We wanted to build a giant monument of the likeness of Bill Davis. And his family said it was never about him. He wouldn't want a giant monument of himself. He wouldn't want a monument at all. He wouldn't want anything named after him. Even when they named the courthouse, he wanted it named after his father. He wouldn't accept the naming in his own name because he had such humility. And so this monument reflects the issues he cared most about. And I think that in itself, the fact that he didn't want any accolades, speaks to the extraordinary Canadian that he was. And I know in Brampton we still miss him dearly, but we're inspired by his legacy. I hope today's unveiling is another chapter in us celebrating one of the most extraordinary and greatest Canadians of all time. I have the honor to introduce our next speaker, which is Premier Ford. Premier Ford, just like Premier Davis, is setting a journey of success. He just won his third mandate, and I was thinking in this last election, all these Conservative seats in Northern Ontario, that hasn't happened since Bill Davis. Seeing Labour leaders endorse Conservatives, that hasn't happened since Bill Davis. So I'm sure somewhere in heaven he's smiling about the success that you've had. And so, Premier Ford, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here to pay tribute to Brampton's favorite and most adored son.
Thank you, and Mayor Brown, they gave me all these notes as well, but I think I'm going off the cuff. But first of all, it's such an honor to be here, and I want to thank the Davis family for having me here. And I always said, right from day one, and all the way back to my dad, that he used to print all these Bill Davis stickers at Deco Labels. He was and always will be the greatest premier this province has ever seen, bar none. He was he did similar to myself. Yes, we were both proud to be part of the PC party, and I always say I don't care about political stripes. I never have, and just working collaboratively as Premier Davis did, working across all aisles, no matter what political stripe it was. And I have used, I think your dad's saying, people who aren't PC, they're politically misguided. Was that it? Philosophically misguided. Well, I switched a little bit because I told my good friend, Wab Canoe, Premier of Manitoba, look, he's politically misguided. I love him, but he should have been a PCer. But there's so many things each and every premier across this great country can learn off Premier Davis, and that's about building. And as you were saying, a nation builder, but a province builder as well, building infrastructure. And this, I do have to look at my notes because I know it was Highway 401, 400, 403, expanding GO Transit. And we're trying to, walk a mile in his shoes to make sure we do the same. And there's so many lessons that I've learned through Bill Davis's legacy. And I just want to, again, thank the Davis family. And I found it just amazing that when I walked in the courthouse and they said Bill Davis's father practiced here in that little courtroom downstairs. That's really amazing. Well, again, I just want to thank the Davis family, and if there's anything I could ever do for each and every one of you, by all means, just give me a call. Just ask Mayor Tory for my cell number. He posts it everywhere online. But you know, Mayor Tory has always told me so many stories about serving with your father. So again, I'm very grateful, and I'll always stick to what I said, the greatest premier. I can't even imagine serving, what was it, 15 years? 14 years? Oh, sure, that's double the amount I've been there. And that's a long time for people to love you and re-elect you for 14 years straight. But again, I want to thank you. May God bless Bill Davis, and may God bless the Davis family. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Premier, for those wonderful words and for joining us today. Just want to acknowledge we do our MPP Amarjot Sandhu, MPP Graham McGregor, MPP Charmaine Williams here present, and we do have Mario Russo, the councillor from Caledon, also here. I would now like to invite Region Appeal Chair Nando Anika to say a few words.
Well, thank you very, very much. What a privilege. It's a true honor to be with you today to remember and celebrate the life of the Honourable William Bill Davis, a proud son of Brampton, one of Canada's most respected leaders, and someone who has dedicated his life to public service. For those of us who serve in government, Bill Davis has always stood as an example of authentic leadership. He was thoughtful, steady, humble, and driven by a deep care for the people. He once famously said, "Bland works." While this phrase may have been delivered with a twinkle in his eye, anyone who understood his vision and values knows that there was nothing bland about him. He led with strength, principle, and a quiet confidence that helped guide Ontario through some of its most transformative decades. Honourable Davis served as Premier for 14 years as part of a remarkable 25-year career in public office. However, his legacy extends far beyond those years. His impact lives on in ways we educate our children, the institutions we rely on, and the communities we continue to build. He had a profound belief in education. He expanded Ontario public school system, launched our community colleges, and Steve created TVO. He understood that investing in young people and ideas was one of the best things the government could do, and generations of Ontarios have benefited from that. I've been around a while, and I had a great privilege in this reference to investing in young people. I'm one of 4 siblings. All 4 of us came through the University of Toronto, and I'm very proud that both my sons went through the University of Toronto as well years later. So you get invited to a lot of events. We were invited to an event at the U of T in Arundel, and instead of bringing my wife to another event after some 30 years in politics, thought I'd bring my son, who was a student at the University of Toronto.
Thank you, Chair Anika. It's now my pleasure to welcome Neil Davis, son of Bill Davis, to say a few words.
Well, if you know my father, there's nothing like a few words coming from a Davis. Mr. Premier, Your Worship, Mr. Chairman, TV host emeritus, and friend, Mr. Pakin, other important leaders in this city, in this room, Townsend Island group here today, and friends of the family. There are 4 generations of the Davis clan here today. I'm going to start with my Aunt Molly Andrus, my dad's much younger sister. And she asked me not to tell her age of 92, so I won't. But she is blessed with the same prodigious facility to remember people, places, and names as Dad was, and she is the acting historian for our family. So why is the city of Brampton the right place? Could it really have been anywhere else? He loved the city, and it showed. For him, Brampton was the nexus of the universe where everything was good, and even the weather was better. Although he enjoyed his travels across his province and all that he saw, he most enjoyed returning home. And why this particular site for him was the right place. Dad spent all of his 92 years living either on or within a block of Main Street, beginning with the castle, as it was called, across from the GO station, just a few blocks north of here, owned by his grandfather. And if you go out the door here, turn left and go south to the first street, you will find Woodbrook Drive, where he and Mom built their first home at 6 Woodbrook. And then if you look across the road, you will see 61 Main Street, built by my grandparents, that Mom and Dad moved into in 1969, and they lived the balance of their lives there. There was some initial resistance to the sculpture being here. There was a thought it should be in Gage Park, but this is where Dad wanted it to be. And the reason for that is he was the last person to represent as one riding all of Peel County. It's now 12 ridings. He was the last to represent all. And he and his father shared an office right behind here. That was important to him. And as was mentioned, A.G. Davis, my grandfather, was the Crown Attorney for 33 years. And he practiced most of it in the courthouse downstairs. And then Dad created the Region Appeal, so he thought being on this site would be appropriate. But as much as anything, it was from his den, you could see this site. So Nando, thank you for helping that happen. So after the site was selected, the journey began to find the artist. We have not got time to explain the journey of the sculpture's creation, but to say a genuine thank you to city staff, and there were many who had a hand in this. The artist selection committee, I think some are here today, who were so knowledgeable where Ian and I were not, but they were so obliging of our opinions nonetheless. And of course to the artists who had the vision of this beautifully unique and remarkably appropriate sculptural tribute to William Davis. And I want to thank the artists for obliging the family in another respect. We wanted to bring a little of Georgian Bay, his other favorite place, to this lovely memorial, and so we have. There are 2 stone benches. There were intended to be 2 stone benches, but we thought, let's bring Georgian Bay rocks to this site. So we did, and if you go and see them, they're beautiful. They're big, but they're beautiful. But on the top of them is embossed 2 trees. Both iconic. Everybody thinks their trees in Georgian Bay are iconic, but he certainly did, these 2 trees. And one is right out in the front of his cottage, and it's on one of the rocks, and the other is just to the south, and it's been embossed into the rock. So we brought a little bit of Georgian Bay here to him. The sculpture has as a sort of a foundation for it, words that hang the portrait of Dad. And how do you find 2 words that fit the person and the legacy to be honored, which will remain relevant and resonant over the decades to follow? Well, I think the artist did just that. Educate, inspire. Education, few things motivated my father more than the importance of education. You will have heard him say, so many of you will have heard him say, show me a great doctor, a great engineer or lawyer, and I will show you a great teacher or teachers who have mattered in their lives. Doing education well is probably as important today as at any moment in my lifetime. With all the challenges facing us, educating a nation of people, younger of course, but not only, who are equipped with the skills and creativity and passion to help us find a better place for them and this country, is not just compelling, but an imperative. And let's not confine the word educate to something that happens within the 4 walls of an academic institution. As important as that certainly is, there are so many places and times, if we are open to it, as we should be, to learn something and to be inspired to do something of value with what we have learned. Perhaps our Indigenous community or the communities are the best example of looking to many non-traditional settings to educate and inspire, including obviously the wise counsel of elders. And as I age into an elder, that has specific appeal to me. I'm not sure about my family. This sculpture is firstly a fitting beautiful acknowledgement of a public life that made a difference and made his city, his province, and his country better. And so many of those initiatives and achievements will continue and forever will continue. When we're asked as a family what he did that mattered most, we don't answer that question. How do you measure the value of bringing a Constitution home to this nation and entrenching a Charter of Rights, or the effort to improve our public education system, which he believed was the fundamental underpinning of any civil society, including starting a college system, new universities, or expansions to existing ones that have added, from the college system alone, 2.5 million well-educated contributing citizens to this province and this country. But I think what matters to his family perhaps even more is that people who see this work become educated and some inspired by not only what he did, but by the kind of person he was. As I have said before, he wrote a story, he created a legacy because of who he was. The accomplishments were the outcomes of his values and his principles, which transcended any narrow lens of partisanship. In both his public and private life, he honored civility, decency, and respect, both given and earned. And he did all of this with humor and humility. Today, more than ever, we need leaders who value these same things. If this sculpture can educate those who see it and who aspire to public leadership, that you can achieve great things by being decent and civil and respectful and humble and honoring one's disposition towards kindness and compassion, then this sculpture will have become all that it should be. And so to end my remarks, I want to again thank everyone for being here today. It means a great deal to all of us. And I know it would to both Dad and Mom. And finally, a thank you to our father, often a reluctant honoree. It has been said that dignity does not consist of possessing honors, but deserving them. Dad, this sculpture is a most appreciated acknowledgement of your devotion to public service and couldn't be more deserved. Happy birthday.
Thank you for sharing those remarks with us, Neil. We are honored to have you all in attendance today to commemorate your father. And now I would like to welcome Steve Paikin, author of Bill Davis, Nation Builder, and Not So Bland After All, to say a few words.
One of the things I still do on TVO is a little show called the On Poly Podcast. Matthew O'Mara, our producer, is in the audience here somewhere. And one of the things they let me do is dress down a little bit. They let me wear T-shirts with former premiers on them, so this felt like the right one to wear today. There we go. I'm not sure, it's only ex-premiers that I wear, which means I'm probably never going to wear yours because you just seem to stick around forever. That seems to be the way. Anyway, 96 today. He'd have been 96 today. I can scarcely believe that because I remember when he was 41 and one of the youngest premiers ever to win. That's just incredible. I've often asked myself, why am I so interested in Bill Davis? Because I am. And I think part of it is what you said, Premier Ford. I think objectively, I think he was the best premier, certainly of the 10 I've known in my lifetime, so I'd start with that. But I also think, I was 10 when he became premier, and when he stopped being premier, I was 24. So those are pretty formative years in the life of a citizen of the province of Ontario. His most formative years were kind of my most formative years also, and I'm sure that had something to do with it. After he stepped down in 1985, I wanted to do an interview with him, because essentially he'd been in, Mr. Chairman, you told me, he was in public life for 25 years, premier for 14, and I really wanted to understand, was there any life outside politics for Bill Davis? Because it was an open question when he stepped down. So I went to his office at the then appropriately named Torrey, Delorier and Binnington. How's that for a name for a firm he was at? And we did an interview. And I have to be honest, I can't remember any of what he said for the first 45 minutes of the interview. But the last thing he said has stayed with me for 40 years. We did that interview in 85 or 86. Let me just finally say, as a general rule, I think we do not a particularly good job honoring those who give themselves to public service. And it's one of the reasons that I'm so admiring, Mayor Brown, of the job that you have done to get to us to where we are today. They say when you care about something, you got to show up. Premier Ford, you've showed up here today, that is, and you did on the day of his service at Roy Thompson Hall, in spite of the fact that your government was giving an economic statement that day. It's wonderful. It's wonderful that so many of you have shown up and that this man is getting his due. And I'm delighted to say that for those people, like the chairman's son, who have no idea who Bill Davis was, you're now going to get to know forever. And that's beautiful. Thank you, everybody.
Hello and welcome, guys. We are with one of the most handsome men I came across when 10 years back I came to Ontario, and he was the mayor of Toronto, the one and only Toronto, and he's Mr. John Tory. So I am absolutely ecstatic to talk to him once again, and I'm going to ask him why he has stayed away from politics for so long, because people like us really want to see him in the limelight. Thank you very much for talking to us, sir, and then please tell us, what are you doing these days?
Well, I'm working in business and serve on a couple of boards, and I'm doing a lot of community work for hospitals and the film festival and our agencies helping people because I love to help people when I was in public life, and I still do. But I'm keeping busy doing all those different things, and I very much miss being in public life, but you know, everything has its time, and so there we are.
Okay, it's not only my wish, but a lot of people that I mingle with, they ask me why Mr. John Tory has just all of a sudden said no to politics, altogether. So, I mean, why is that? Because people still love you. You have no plans of coming back at all?
Well, I had some complications in my personal life, and I thought it was best, out of respect for all the people involved, especially my family, that I should step aside. So I did, and then you spend time aside doing other things in the community and trying to continue to help people and help things you respect and believe in. And so there are people urging me to come back to politics, and I've said I would think about that, but that's a big decision to make, and so we're thinking about it, and I'm still trying to do everything I can to make sure that Toronto and Ontario and Canada are a better place for people.
I have just heard, I don't know if this is true, but I have just heard that you might be writing a book, or you are in the process of writing a book. How true that rumor is?
Well, I was approached, and I'm very interested in doing that, because it's not because I want to write a book about myself, but I've learned a lot, and I've learned a lot from a lot of other people, including the leaders I've worked with and the experiences I've had in business and in politics and in charity in the community. And so those are stories I'd like to share, even with my own family, but also with anybody else who's interested. And so that will be something that will be forthcoming at some point in time, depending on what else I do in my life. You have to find the time to spend all those hours that Steve Pagan spent with Mr. Davis. Not that they're comparable, but you have to find the time to do it. So I will, because I want to share those stories and experiences, especially all the wonderful people that I've met all across this city from every corner. And so it'll probably happen.
But my last question absolutely is, when you were the mayor of Toronto, what was your biggest achievement that you still sit back and think that, wow, I did at least this one, bang on. It was so nice, and I'm so proud of it.
Well, I could name transit plans, including the biggest one entered with Premier Ford and Prime Minister Trudeau at the time. I could name parks that were created. I could name things we did for lower income people in terms of transit fares. But I think the most important role that I played, certainly I thought, a principal responsibility of the mayor, any mayor of Toronto, is to hold the city together and to respect its diversity, to get the best out of its diversity, to make sure that everybody else in the world knew that we were the most diverse city in the world and that we got along here. And I see that some of that is strained a little bit, and I think we've got to keep working to make sure that everybody feels included, everybody feels recognized and respected. And I think I did a good job at that, I believe. And I saw us through the pandemic too, which was a very hard time for people, and I tried to do my best to make sure they felt comforted and reassured by that. So, it's not up to me to decide what I did well. Everybody else will sort that out, but I did my best.
Thank you very much, sir, for your comments. We have a very, very proud privilege of talking to none other than Bill Davis's son, Mr. Neil. We are going to talk about his father's legacy and how the family is doing, if not in politics, otherwise, and how proud do they feel to be part of that, not only that towering personality, but his legacy as well. So Neil, thank you very much for talking to us. Please tell us something about your father that you saw over the years, because he was the premier for 14 years. How did the province grow? What was he himself was proud of, his achievements in the province as a premier? And then how did you see his legacy being carried forward?
Well, I think what he was perhaps most proud of was his role in bringing the Constitution back to this country, and for putting in place a Charter of Rights for the first time. But he also was as proud of his role in education. He was education minister from 1963 to 71, and then he was really the education premier from 71 to 85. He believed education was the foundation of any civilized society. It was the way we could provide to everybody the same opportunity to participate in what this nation has to give, this province had to give. And so he would not pick, he wouldn't do that. I think what he would do, and he would have great difficulty talking about himself. He was very humble about his accomplishments, and there were many, and you heard a number recited today. He had the first woman cabinet minister in the history of the province. He started the first Ministry of the Environment in North America, not just in this country, but in North America. So there's so many things you could point to. I think what he would probably say is that how he did it, being fair to everybody, that they have a different perspective. He would respect the perspective. Didn't mean he agreed with the perspective, but he always found a way to get things done without making other people feel smaller about what they were doing.
You are his son, and I'm sure that when your father was the premier, many might have thought that you will walk in his footsteps. However, you decided otherwise. So what was the reason or rationale behind it?
Well, when he first retired, there were some who came to me and thought I should take his position in the riding he was in. But I had been married for 4 years and had 2 kids at the time. My father never made any money in politics, so all 5 kids had to earn their own way. So it was not the right time for me. And truthfully, it never became the right time to do it. Are there days I regret that perhaps I hadn't jumped in at some point? I guess so. But I'm happy with, he left a legacy that I don't think could have been matched by anybody who followed him from the family. Now, I will say the next generation, they're a step removed. I think they'd have an easier time, quite frankly, being able to convince people that they are worthy of supporting, whereas, you know, his immediate 5 kids, that would have been difficult to think that he left such an indelible mark on this province. To think anybody from the family who followed him could do justice to that, it wouldn't have been easy.
I know, I have heard this from a lot of kids of the great stars as well. And your father in his own right was a star. So they always have this fear that they might fail. They might not be able to, you know, carry on the same legacy. I mean, I can understand the fears behind it. At the moment, what is the family, you know, involved in? If not, you know, politics, are they involved in community work? What kind of community work is that? How they you know, get engaged in the community that your father built, actually, especially in Brampton?
Well, my brother and I are the only 2 still living here, but I have to say that probably genetic, but also environmental. He passed on, as did my mother, a need to give back to your community. And all of us have taken turns at different things in our lives. I was on the board of Sheridan College at 27 years of age, and I still sit on boards today. Enjoyed all of it, quite frankly. I found it broadened my perspective of life. It gave me a different purpose than just going to my job every day, which I enjoyed, and it gave me a living to be able to do other things. But all of the different community groups that I've been involved with, my sisters have been involved with, my brother, I think we all felt that we were missing something if we didn't have that in our lives. And as I said, I think it was almost genetic that we had to do it. So.
You said something very, very interesting, which I just heard, and I just thought that it's very, very important to ask you because your father was a politician for 14 years and people just adored him. You said that your father did not leave you money. You, all five of you, had to work very hard, which means that he was an extremely fair man. Politicians across the globe that we see are, involved in all kinds of financial scams and scandals and all that. How do you think your father was not really tempted, and how did he kept his integrity and name and his, image so clean?
Oh, I think it was easy. It was who he was. If you look at both his parents, my grandfather, his father, who was Crown Attorney for 33 years in this county at the time, they just lived that way. They lived with integrity, with decency, with civility. They respected others. And truthfully, this town was that way. Now a city, but town when he grew up. And so there was no temptation because it just wasn't in him to ever think that that was something. He wouldn't consider it. It just wouldn't be part of who he was.
So amazing. It is so amazing to hear from you such a thing because we really miss politicians like this. Neil, one, again, very important thing. What difference do you see in the province itself, the province of Ontario, from your father's time to now? Because we hear a lot of hate crimes, a lot of crimes, other crimes, propping up over here. So how do you think the times were different then? And I mean, I'm not criticizing the politicians now. They are doing their best and our police is also the best. But how do you think these things seeped in the society that was so civil and kind and took care of one another?
Well, I'm not sure it's as stark as you're making it. I think we have difficulties today, but there were difficulties then too. It was perhaps a little simpler time. I think the interconnectedness of social media has brought things to people that perhaps they wouldn't have seen, and they wouldn't have known to gather around things they shouldn't have gathered around. But they also gather around wonderful missions in life. And so it's more complex, but still, I think we need to elect people who just come with it with goodwill, with the best of intentions, not to have the job, but to make a difference with it. And if we elect people like that, they'll figure out solutions to these issues.
Just absolutely my last question. You or anyone in your family, do you think of writing a memoir on your father's legacy, or the grandkids they think of, their grandfather, writing something about him, or is it in the works, or you're still, thinking if anything can be written about such a great man?
Well, honestly, you heard one of the speakers today who did, I think, as fine a job as anybody's going to do, certainly from our family. So we're very happy with how Steve Paikin captured my father in his book. And no, I think what I'm hoping from today is that our family itself will continue to remember how Dad lived and try and abide by the same principles that he did in living their life, whatever they may do.
Thank you very much for your kind comments.
Yeah, thank you.
तो ये था हमारा आज का इवेंट। वी होप कि आपको पसंद आया होगा। बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग हमने इंटरव्यूज़ लिए। इन इंटरव्यूज़ के ऊपर ज़रूर अपने कमेंट्स दीजिए कि आपको कैसे लगे, और हम जो है इस तरह के और भी इवेंट्स आपके लिए आने वाले दिनों में कवर करते रहेंगे, बट वी विल ऑल्सो वेट फॉर योर फीडबैक। अभी मुझे शाजिया मलिक को और कैमरे के पीछे यास्मीन जी को दीजिए इजाज़त। बाय फॉर नाउ।